In a chilling revelation at the recent Conservative Political Action Conference, commonly known as CPAC, ultra-right-wing Republican Jack Prosak stated, and I quote, "Welcome to the end of democracy. We are here to overthrow it completely. We didn't get all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it and replace it with this right here." And then he held up a chain with the big cross on it. Following in lockstep, former White House advisor and outspoken white supremacist Steve Bannon yelled out, "Amen." Amidst fervent cheers, Prosak's declaration demonstrates the GOP's majoritarian embrace of theocratic authoritarianism. Republicans' apparent zeal to dismantle Americans' democratic institutions, often implied or spoken behind closed doors, is now out of the closet for all to know. As the specter of authoritarianism looms large, Prosak's remarks serve as a stark reminder of the perilous path our weakened democracy faces in the hands of its detractors. This is a story based on the New Republic article by Tori Otten, February 23rd, 2024. So, Scott, what do you think?
Out of the closet indeed, right? And so, they're not only saying the quiet parts out loud these days, but it's all quiet parts, right? And so, Churchill famously said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all of the others. And so we may get a chance to experience that ourselves. And, it's really kind of ironic, and it would be hilarious if it weren't so ominous and terrifying. We start, power to the people quickly fades to power to some people. And that even goes to power to one person, right? And so it's the freedom that is afforded to individuals, especially people who find themselves in position of power. They exercise that freedom to maintain that power. They kind of push the envelope there. They try to manipulate the system. And if democracy is getting in the way, then democracy has to go, right? And so that's really the issue that they're talking about here. I found a book review from a Georgetown professor by the name of Fatali Mogadam. He wrote this book. He sees that fear and crisis management is the tool that can slap the manacles of dictatorship onto the free hands of democracy. He thinks that is really the motivator here. And we've heard that before. We've talked about this kind of thing on the nonprofits before, but it's really fear as a motivator. His book is called Threat to Democracy: The Appeal of Authoritarianism in an Age of Uncertainty. And he talks about in the book about how, we've seen this kind of thing happen before. We've seen the individuals using fear within the context of a free or at least a semi-free society. And they use that to kind of rile up their support and don't worry, I can save us, right? They present it, and we've seen this kind of thing in religion all the time. They mock up this threat. They fan the flames of fear, and then they say, "Hey, I'm the only one who can solve your problem. Put me in charge," right? And then, of course, it gets to be too late. In the book, he points out the dictator then attacks institutions and individuals that have the power to constrain them. Such crisis incidents in the past have included the Iran hostage crisis that swept Khomeini into power and the 2016 coup that brought Erdogan to power in Turkey. And so here's the interesting thing about his book, though. He believes that the people who want open societies would be better served with a bottom-up approach. It's about people talking about things. It's about people broaching those previously, no-touch subjects. He said, "We need more civic engagement and civic education, and we need to strengthen local activism. We've got a lot of emphasis at the moment on national efforts, but we also need to get down at the local level. Resistance through local activism is often the most successful." And so what that means is that we need to be active. We need to have those difficult political conversations. I think that in this case, it might be a case where light can be the most the most effective disinfectant, right? If we shine light on the issue, at least that's what he's a psychologist, at least that's what he thinks, is that if we can get people talking, if we can raise awareness of what's happening, then we'll be in a much better position to combat it. And Fidel?
My biggest concern is that people are going to look at this and they're going to take it with, oh, clickbait mentality. We hear so many outrageous things being said time and again that I'm not sure that most people are even going to take this seriously. But I think we should. And this is going to be somebody that I'm sure is real popular with everyone here. But years ago, Robert Bork wrote a book called Slouching Towards Gomorrah. And I have a feeling that we as a country right now are just kind of slouching towards Gilead. We have a group of people in this country, they want a theocracy. I don't think that they're just saying this to rile people up. I think they're saying this because that's what they want. They want a power grab so they can get control of this country. And this is no exception. They believe that their God should dictate to government, not government rights coming from the government, but since their rights come from God, they should listen to God first. This is lowest common denominator politics. This is something to reach out and grab those people who honestly aren't educated on the subjects that matter. And this is what concerns me, because they are going to vote and do the things that they want to do based on their emotions and what sounds good and what fits what they hear at church, more than what's better for the people around us. Or as you mentioned, the local community, what's best for the people in their community or even themselves. They consistently act against their own self-interest. Honestly, I will admit that this is a mix, in my opinion, of true believers and your typical opportunists. And oftentimes, of course, you have believers who, well, they're going to take some opportunities on the side too. And I really hope that the exposure to this type of talk and to this type of rhetoric, they're projecting out what they want, what their goal is. I just hope it's our job to make sure that we take people when they say this at their word, because they don't want a democracy. They want a theocracy. Kelly?
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of people don't realize that going to a theocracy, what that would do to us. And they think that the entire country would go for something like that, and that is the only way to solve our problems, because God's the perfect problem solver, right? I don't think that that's the way to go. Obviously, there's a lot of problems that come with it. There's a reason why our founding fathers made the separation between government and religion. We talked about it earlier this week in another story about how a conflict between Protestants and Catholics. And this is that same problem where these Christian nationalists have this idea that everybody thinks the exact same way they do. And I don't think they realize how small of a minority that they actually are. 3 in 10 Americans actually identify as Christian nationalists. Now, out of that 3 in 10, not all of them, when asked, gave the same definition of what a Christian nationalist is. So a lot of them didn't realize what exactly the term represents. They thought, hey, I'm a Christian. I love this country. I think this is a great nation. So yeah, I guess I'm a Christian nationalist. They don't realize what these group of fanatical people like Prosak are and what they're trying to push. So I don't even think that 3 in 10 Americans are Christian nationalists. And so then I start thinking about this. Is this something, we get fired up about this. We're always talking about it. They are the enemy in a lot of ways. But are we overstating the danger from these people? If they're not 3 in 10, let's conservatively say they're 2 in 10. We can beat them in any election. We can We can beat them in a fight if we had to. Are they really the big danger that we think we are? Not that we shouldn't be telling everybody who they are. Like Scott says, this what we need to do is inform people and bring the light from the bottom up, right? But I have to wonder if we're just kind of like overblowing the problem. Richard?
I wish what you're saying was true, but I think it's exactly the opposite of that. First of all, they've got a majority of friends on the Supreme Court.
No, they don't though.
Yes, they do.
They don't. They got five Catholics on the Supreme Court,
Yeah,
not five fanatical Protestants.
You didn't listen carefully. I didn't say Christian nationalists. I said friends. And that court has been giving more leeway and twisting the First Amendment around to make it be like it's a benefit for religion to not be picked on as opposed to non-religions to be picked on. It's transforming, it's changing, and it's not good. I mean, I follow this law stuff very carefully, and it's scary, okay? There have been some decisions recently, like the one in Washington about the coach being allowed to give prayers at the end of the football game, which would never have happened in a previous court, never. So it's something we really need to worry about. Besides that, they have the Heritage Foundation and their 2025 program, and they've got some billionaires behind them. So it's, you don't have to be the biggest group if you're well organized. And when you said we could fight them, I beg to differ with you. I would bet that more of those Christian nationalists have AR-15s than secular humanists do. So I think we've got to be really careful about this and not, I mean, they're trying to take over school boards and start book banning. Look what happened in Florida. I mean, it happens in Texas too. I mean, they tried to put pastors in for school counselors that had no school counseling training. They're trying to infuse their ideology at all levels, and they're getting away with it quite a bit. We're fighting it a lot. They haven't won it yet, and but I think it's more dangerous because they want to do it and they're willing to do it, and in some respects they have some foreign allies, which is very unfortunate. But we just have to be really careful when we see that stuff happening and speak out against it, stand up against it. The thing that most people don't realize, well, first of all, there's an education problem. For the same reason why a lot of us are involved in this organization, there's a lot of people that were not taught as they grew up to be skeptical. They were taught to believe whatever some authority told them. That creates a horrible problem. But the other side of it, that when I talk to some of these people, they think, well, the guy that I want to be in charge, he'll be my friend. Guess what? He dies, his son takes over, or his cousin takes over, and he doesn't like you. And now there's no courts to go to. There's no due process. There's nothing, just a dictator. Look at the way Putin runs Russia. If you don't like his stuff, you fall out of a 6-story building. I mean, that's, there's no place to complain there. And that's the difference. I mean, our legal system has problems, but I'll tell you, it's head and shoulders above most others. And at least you can have your day in court. And, there are people to help you if somebody messes with you. So I am deeply concerned about this move toward theocracy. I find it very scary. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, Richard, you said something about an education problem, and I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Kelly, you said that 3 in 10 Americans identify as Christian nationalists. Last time I was on the nonprofits, I quoted some research that said over half of American adults know nothing about Christian nationalism. They've never heard anything about it. And I would imagine that those two groups are heavily overlapping. I would bet that many of those people that said, yeah, I'm a Christian, just like you were saying, they saw the word Christian there and they signed off on it. They scrolled right to the bottom of that user agreement and signed their name. And so I think I agree with Dr. Mogadam, and I think that, education, I think, is a key. There was one quote from the article that I wanted to bring up here, and I think that will kind of illustrate what we're talking about here. He said, We didn't get all the way here, all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it and replace it with this right here. He said, gesturing to the crowd and holding up his fist. All glory is not to government, all glory to God. And then
let me just correct you. I saw the actual thing. He didn't hold up his fist. He held up a cross on a chain.
Even better, right? Okay, so he
that's
held
what
that
it
up.
was.
But then Bannon, his response was to laugh and say amen. And so I have to wonder, and I know I might be the only one on the panel here that thinks this, but I wonder if the religion aspect is just merely a tool. I wonder if it's just a way of firing up that fear. We need, it's a convenient tool. I'm not convinced that the Christian nationalist leaders are in fact concerned at all about the Christianity. I'm not I don't think that's their main thing. I don't think that they want a theocracy. I think that they want a dictatorship. And again, I may or may not be the only one who thinks that, but it's frightening, and it's something that people can, people hold their religion very tightly to their identity, and that makes them vulnerable for that. We see, you find out what's important to a person and you attack that thing, or you make it seem like that thing is being attacked. You make it seem like that identity is being attacked. You make it seem like your religious faith is being attacked. Your God is being attacked here. Your belief in your God is being attacked. What more could be foundational to your personality than your belief in your God? And that's being threatened. What are you going to do about it? And so it's that kind of thing. I think that there's plenty of manipulation going on here. I think that, and again, maybe I'm being cynical, maybe I'm being, paranoid here, but we see it happen frequently. We see candidates holding up Bibles. We see, preaching from, we see, electioneering happening at the pulpit. We see all this kind of overlap. And I think that blurriness, I think that lack of education in this case is a feature and not a bug. And I think that's I think things are being misused. And I think that, again, going back to Dr. Moghadam's idea that we need to talk about it. We need to encourage discussion. We need to talk to each other. We need to help spread that. We need to solve that education problem, Richard, that you were talking about. And really the only way to do that is to be open and to talk to other people, breach those conversations, have that conversation with that uncle that, it's going to be uncomfortable, but talking about it can help. And, it might not change that person's mind, but there might be somebody watching that will be affected, or at least they will be a little bit more knowledgeable about the situation. Maybe we can move that dial. 54%, I think it was, of Americans that had no idea what Christian nationalism was. We can push that. Maybe if we can, push that, down in the negative direction, then we can help things. Maybe we can make a difference by doing things like we're doing right now, having these discussions with each other, by watching discussions online, or, encouraging discussions online. There are things that we can do to overcome that education problem. And of course, I'm biased as being an educator. I think that education is power. And I think this is a perfect example of that particular idea. Infidel?
I do think that education is one of the big tools that they themselves fear. Mm-hmm. We look at situation in North Carolina where Lieutenant Governor he's running for governor now, and he wants to remove social studies and science up until the 5th grade. He doesn't even want it even being taught in class because they want an ignorant population. They want a series of people who go, oh, okay, this sounds right. They want people who are sitting week in and week out with their electioneering pastor spewing hate and nonsense and all sorts of vile things over that pulpit to those people. That's what they want. And I do think you're right. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some true believers in there. I take Mike Johnson. I believe he's a true believer. But overall, there's many who are just opportunists. They're looking for a dictatorship. They're looking to replace our government with something else. And right now, they know that there are people on that side who, yes, see the world around them changing, and through that are fearful of those changes. And they're getting told day in and day out when they go to church that there's a problem, that the problem is them and not you. And that's reinforcing it. And inside of that echo chamber, my concern is yes, in time, those numbers are continuing to go against them. They're dwindling. They're hurting. The churches are dying. Their attendance is dropping consistently. But right now, they're a great tool. And when you take these people who 10 years ago were completely apolitical, couldn't have told you who the governor of their state was, couldn't have even named one U.S. representative, and now they think they're constitutional experts, and really all they are people that can't even give a complete sentence of trying to explain anything about politics, but they think they've got it all figured out. And that's the people that people like this are going for. They're trying to feed them into this because they don't need to know what Christian nationalism is. As you said, they need to scroll down to the bottom of the user agreement, check the box, and sign off. And that's what they're looking for. That's all they need. They don't want people to understand what Christian nationalism really is. And whether they care about it or not, yes, they want their person in power, whoever that is. They want to end this system because it's an inconvenience to them. So with that in mind, I agree. There are uncomfortable conversations that need to be had, and we need to have those. We need to continue to have those because being silent helps no one but them. Kelly?
Yeah, I did one point before we wrap this up. A lot of liberals do have guns. They just don't talk about it. I could arm this whole panel. So, you can get all the you can get all the ACA shows and podcast forum at tiny.cc/ACAEN podcast. So check it out. And if you want more of the nonprofits, just click right here.